we've learned that we can't take interest. We can't charge interest. We'll learn in the next couple of Mishnayot that actually this applies to Jews. So we'll learn in the next couple of Mishnayot the situation with non-Jews. But anyway, so far, the rule is we can't take interest. And the Gemara, the Talmud, makes a fascinating comment halfway through the chapter. At kan ribit ktsutsa, until here fixed interest, mikan ve'elach avak ribit. From here forward, the dust of interest. In other words, it's not kind of cash interest in the sense that I lend you £10 and you pay me back 11, or you pay me back £1 a year interest. There's some kind of benefit that I get in place of interest. So I lend you £10 and you do me a favor, you let me live rent free in your house, or you charge me reduced rent, or maybe you'll do me some other kind of favor. Maybe there's some other kind of favor you might do for me. And it's with the question of this other sort of favor you might do for me that the Mishnah is now going to pick up we're in the fourth Mishnah now, the fifth chapter. The fifth chapter is the chapter of interest. And the fourth Mishnah says, Ein moshivin Hamvani lemachtzit sachar. We can't set up a shopkeeper on a half profit basis. What does that mean? Well, it's going to be, let's keep reading in the Mishnah because it starts to be clearer. Lo yiten lo ma'ot likach bahen perot lemachtzit sachar. We don't give him money to buy produce on half profit. Unless we pay for his wage as a, well, po'el batel, I've translated here as a laborer, but it could be an unemployed laborer. Yeah, as an unemployed laborer. In other words, we pay him his wage. So let's just take a step back and let's see what's going on here. Setting up the shopkeeper seems to be effectively just essentially giving him the produce to sell, as opposed to giving him the money to buy produce to sell. But why shouldn't we do that without paying him his wage? And remember, we're talking about benefit in kind. Now, we're going to split the profits. Well, as far as the profits which the shopkeeper is going to take, well, it's as if almost like he has an equity stake in this business. He's going to take the profits and the losses. But what about my stake? What about my stake? As far as my stake is concerned, I mean, this is the role of the capitalist, right? He hands over the capital and the worker takes care of it for him. So the worker is working, is carrying out work on my stake to earn those profits. And as far as his half is concerned, well, it looks like we've effectively lent him the money to go into business. And how is he paying us? Well, he's paying us. I've lent him, let's say there's $10 of capital here. I've lent him $5 of capital, and he benefits from that. That's his benefit. But he's looking after my $5 of capital. And, well, I'm not paying him. I'm not paying him to look after my $5 of capital. The payment is his profit from the $5 that he owns. It's as if I've lent him the $5 to make money, and he's not paying the interest, but he is giving me work. He is taking care of my share for me. And that's why the Mishnah concludes, unless he pays him his wage as a laborer. It's fine for me to give this guy $5 and he can create a business for it. Absolutely fine. But if at the same time he's going to take care of my $5, I have to pay him a market rate for his services. Otherwise, it looks like he's paying me interest on the $5 of equity investment. And that interest is a benefit in kind. He's paying it by working for me. And we can't do that. And we're going to apply the same rule to animals. We're not going to set up hens for half value. And we're not going to value calves or foals for half profits. Unless he pays him the wage of his labor and the food. This is the food that we're going to give to the animals. These are animals which are going to need food in order to grow. And we don't want to be in a situation where effectively the labor of taking care of these hens or calves or foals, the labor of taking care of them, and the food, the expenditure required to feed them is a sort of benefit in kind that I'm receiving in exchange for half the equity stake. We don't want to be that, but be like that. So we pay him the wage of his labor and his food. And somehow, if there isn't an equity stake, and this is the subject of the final part of the Mishnah, aval makablim agalim usiachem l'matzah, but we can receive the care of calves and foals in return for half the profits. And we can rear them until they get to, well, a third. A third here is hard to translate. Maybe it's a third of their growth. Maybe they grow to a certain size as mushulash. And a donkey till it can carry a burden. It seems though there are situations where we can employ someone to take care of our property in return for half the profit. And the Gemara distinguishes this case by saying, gosh, in this case, the worker is not an equity stakeholder. He doesn't share any losses. He doesn't share in any losses from the enterprise, but his wage is based on a proportion of the increase in value. And similarly, as the Mishnah is going to go on to say, Shamin parava chamor v'chol davar dar shidar kol asot velocha. So we can value, when we're talking about valuing here, we are talking about valuing the item that goes into the partnership for the purpose of measuring profit or loss. And it seems so if there's something that both works and eats, it doesn't just eat, but it works, i.e., it generates its own income. So we're not receiving benefit in kind from the person, from the custodian, because the custodian gets the benefit of the work. The custodian, anything that works and eats. It seems like we can set this up in a 50-50 share, because in this situation, while we're not paying the laborer for his burden, we're effectively giving him or her a benefit in kind from the work that the cow or the donkey does. So so we don't consider this interest. And the Mishnah then goes on, if there's offspring, where the customer is to sell it off immediately at birth, that's what they do. And if the custom is to rear them first and then sell them off, then they do that. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is gonna disagree. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Shamin egel im imo. We can value a calf with its mother. This is really interesting because the calf obviously can't work, whereas the mother can. Usiach im imo, and a foal with its mother. And again, the mother is a horse, right? The horse can work, but the foal can't do that. So Rabbi Gamliel seems to be blurring these boundaries between an object that can work and an object that can't work. And And he goes on to say, "Umafriz al sadehu ve'eno choshesh mishem ribit," and he can offer increased rent in exchange. Umafriz al sadehu. The Gemara explains this as lahafriz is to extend. He can basically say to the landowner, "Look, I'll give you a loan. I'll give you a loan so that you can improve the field, and I will pay you additional rent." And there's no fear of interest. And the halacha does not go according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, but his opinion is still preserved in the Mishnah.